Yuri Bezmenov, also known by his alias Thomas David Schumann, was a Soviet defector, KGB operative, and propaganda expert whose insights into ideological subversion and psychological warfare have garnered considerable attention, especially in the context of Cold War dynamics. Born in 1939 in the Soviet Union, Bezmenov's life provides a compelling narrative of disillusionment with the communist system, his defection to the West, and his subsequent mission to educate people about the strategies and tactics used by totalitarian regimes to undermine free societies. Yuri Alexandrovich Bezmenov was the son of a high-ranking Soviet military officer. Growing up in an environment steeped in communist ideology, he initially embraced the ideals of the Soviet state. Bezmenov studied at the prestigious Institute of Oriental Languages in Moscow, where he specialized in Indian culture and languages. This education laid the foundation for his future assignments as a propaganda expert. After completing his studies, Bezmenov joined the Novosti press agency, APN, which was a front organization for the KGB. Novosti was not a traditional news outlet, but rather a tool of Soviet propaganda, tasked with shaping public opinion abroad in favor of the USSR. Bezmenov's work involved crafting narratives, manipulating information, and influencing journalists and intellectuals to serve Soviet interests. Despite his initial dedication to the communist cause, Bezmenov became increasingly disillusioned with the Soviet system. He observed the hypocrisy, corruption, and brutality that characterized the regime's inner workings. His experiences in India, where he was stationed as a Soviet cultural attaché, further deepened his discontent. He witnessed how the KGB manipulated Indian politics and infiltrated institutions, and he grew uncomfortable with the coercive methods used to achieve Soviet objectives. Bezmenov's breaking point came when he was ordered to participate in the suppression of dissidents and the manipulation of cultural elites. Realizing he could no longer serve a system he considered morally bankrupt, he decided to defect. In 1970, Bezmenov executed a daring escape from the Soviet system. Disguising himself as a hippie, he mingled with Western tourists in India and managed to reach the safety of the U.S. Embassy. From there, he was granted asylum in Canada, where he began his life anew. His defection was a significant loss for the KGB, as Bezmenov possessed deep knowledge of Soviet propaganda tactics and operations. In the West, he adopted the pseudonym Thomas David Schumann and embarked on a mission to expose the strategies employed by totalitarian regimes to undermine democratic societies. One of Bezmenov's most enduring contributions was his detailed exposition of ideological subversion, a process he described as the gradual erosion of a nation's values, institutions, and culture from within. In his lectures, interviews, and writings, he outlined the 4 stages of subversion. Demoralization. This is the longest stage, often taking 15 to 20 years, equivalent to the time required to educate a generation. During this phase, a society's moral and ideological foundations are undermined through infiltration of educational institutions, media, and culture. The goal is to sow confusion, division, and a loss of faith in traditional values. Destabilization. In this stage, the focus shifts to destabilizing key sectors such as the economy, law enforcement, and foreign relations. The aim is to create chaos and weaken the society's ability to respond to internal and external threats. Crisis. A major upheaval, such as political turmoil, economic collapse, or widespread unrest, is engineered or exacerbated. This creates an environment ripe for radical change. Normalization. Once a crisis is resolved, often through the imposition of a new regime or system, the society is normalized under the control of the subverting power. The term normalization is a euphemism used to mask the loss of freedom and the establishment of authoritarian rule. Bezmenov's warnings about ideological subversion gained renewed attention in the 21st century as scholars, commentators, and citizens observe parallels between his descriptions and contemporary societal trends. His insights have been cited in discussions about media manipulation, cultural polarization, and the erosion of democratic norms. While some critics argue that Bezmenov's theories were exaggerated or overly influenced by his Cold War perspective, Others contend that his observations offer valuable lessons about the vulnerabilities of free societies to psychological and ideological warfare. His work underscores the importance of critical thinking, vigilance, and the preservation of democratic principles in the face of external and internal threats. Yuri Bezmenov's life was a testament to the power of individual conscience and the courage required to stand against oppressive systems. His efforts to expose the mechanisms of ideological subversion serve as a reminder of the enduring struggle between freedom and tyranny. In a world where information is increasingly weaponized, Bezmenov's message remains profoundly relevant. The defense of liberty begins with the recognition of the subtle forces that seek to undermine it.
Thank you for listening to History Videos 101. Don't forget to subscribe and follow us for more fascinating content.